Episode 2 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, just aired early on AMC Plus, and I just watched it. I'm gonna review it for you guys, give you my first reaction. This video will be full of spoilers, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, you should go watch it and then come back and watch this. However, this isn't gonna be a play-by-play. I'm not gonna talk about every single thing that happens in the episode, just the stuff that I liked and anything that I disliked. And once again, before we get into this video, subscribe. I talk about the Walking Dead universe all the time on this page. I talk about every single episode as it airs, but I also talk about other TV shows, I talk about horror movies, and I talk about survival horror video games as well. But anyway, let's get into episode 2 of Daryl. I was actually really excited to watch this episode of Daryl. If you watched my video for episode 1, you would remember me saying that this is the first time in a while that I feel true, genuine excitement for a new episode of The Walking Dead universe. Whenever there's a new episode of The Walking Dead, what I do is I wake up and then I watch it first thing in the morning, and then I shower and I process the episode, and then I film this. And with the last couple seasons of The Walking Dead, with The Walking Dead World Beyond, with the last couple seasons of Fear, at times, most of the time, it felt like a chore. Don't get me wrong, I still love making these videos. I still love discussing The Walking Dead. I still like watching the shows, but it felt like a chore sometimes. But with this episode of Daryl, I woke up wide awake. I was so excited to sit down, watch the episode, and now I'm so excited to talk about it because this show is starting off fantastic. So as the episode begins, we get flashbacks. So we actually get to see more of the start of the apocalypse, but this time from Isabel's perspective as she's in France. And at first I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit because, don't get me wrong, I like a well-used flashback when it comes to the stories that I consume. But a lot of the times flashbacks feel kind of lazy. It kind of feels like a cheap way to do character development because instead of showing us a character actually progress and their character arc in modern times, they show us who they used to be and then we just compare it to who they are now, and it's a cheap way to do character development. And it kind of felt that way at first because when we see Isabel at the start of the apocalypse, she is nothing like how we know her now. Now she's a nun trying to take care of this child, and back then she's like doing coke, she's stealing watches, she doesn't seem to be an overall good person. And again, I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh wow, they want us to see how far she's changed. But then I started to really enjoy this because it's actually done well. All the flashback sequences in this episode were fantastic. Seeing the start of the apocalypse, it was very brief. It wasn't the majority of the episode, but it was done fantastic. There were some sequences in this episode that reminded me of how I wished Fear the Walking Dead Season 1 handled the start of the apocalypse. And I also started to like it because it's really starting to dawn on me how good of a character Isabel is so far. I'd argue that she's off to arguably the strongest start of any new character in years and years and years of the Walking Dead universe. We've only known her for 2 episodes, but I'm already rooting for her. I'm already supporting her. I'm already really interested to see where her character goes in the future. I'm already gonna be super depressed if she dies. And I didn't feel that way for any new character in The Walking Dead Dead City. I didn't feel that way for any new character in The Walking Dead Season 11 or 10 or honestly, even 9. Now, 9 introduced Magda's group, and they were fantastic, but they took a bit longer to grow on me than Isabel is right now. And one of the biggest standouts of this episode, again, spoiler alert, is how these flashbacks end, and we see Isabel's sister, as a walker, give birth to this new messiah of a child. Once again, I'm forgetting his name. And the juxtaposition of the walker screaming and the baby crying simultaneously, it was just mind-blowing, and I loved seeing that. Now, I'm not sure what they're gonna do with this plot line or what they're gonna do with this child's birth in terms of who they think he is as a messiah, but as of right now, it might be a bit too derivative of The Last of Us TV show because when Ellie was born, spoiler alert for The Last of Us TV show, but when Ellie was born, her mom was bit and infected. And then what was happening in the modern setting of this episode was also fantastic. We get Daryl and his small group of nuns and the child meeting this new group of all teenagers and children. And at first, again, I thought this was going to annoy me because in the Walking Dead universe and Fear the Walking Dead in the main show, we've already met multiple groups that consist of mainly children. So again, I initially rolled my eyes, thought that they're doing the same old thing again, but I ended up liking this group a lot. The characters in this group felt real. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes when it just comes to storytelling in general, whether it's a TV show, a movie, a novel, what have you. And that's that what you're writing, whether or not it's good or bad, it's not what it's about, it's how it's about it. And again, we've gotten flashbacks all the time in this universe. We've met groups of children in this universe all the time. We've seen plot lines like this happen in universes other than The Walking Dead. And they really took a gamble because it ran the risk of being, again, more derivative than it is now, being just repetitive, being kind of boring, but the way they present it to us is so good, and that's why I'm liking this show so much. There was also just some great action sequences in this episode that I really appreciated, and one of the things that I was looking forward to in this show overall was France and the setting of France, because Daryl approaches like this mini castle style thing with a moat around it, and in this moat is a bunch of walkers and a drawbridge, and I just loved seeing that because it's something we've never seen in the Walking Dead universe before, and I just love how the setting is affecting the action sequences in such a unique and cool way. And in this action sequence, there's this guy who stole from the group of children, and then Daryl meets him, and it's hilarious because he keeps mentioning that he's American, and there comes a point where he's dangling from the drawbridge and he's tied up and the walkers are approaching and he's screaming that he's an American, and it's just hilarious. That mixed with the group of children calling Daryl Father Daryl and him like being pressured to give grace to this whole group of people is just hilarious to me. This show by no means is a comedy show, but the comedic moments in this show so far, only 2 episodes in, are arguably better than anything we've ever gotten in the Walking Dead universe when it comes to comedy. And speaking of the comedy, this is arguably so far, in my opinion, the most perfectly balanced version of Daryl as a character that we've gotten in the Walking Dead universe in a very long time, because he's still serious, he's still older, he still has that depression that truly started when he lost Merle, and then he doubled down on it when he lost Beth, and then when he caused Glenn's death and he just felt like a failure is when he became the Daryl that he's been for years and years now. He's still that character, so the writing is still true to his character, but he's also starting to get a lot of the comedy and a lot of the sass and a lot of the just old school Daryl Dixon vibes that we originally got from him in seasons 1, 2, and 3. And I just love seeing that because, again, it just feels like the perfectly balanced version of Daryl as a character and where he should be right now. But my biggest question mark in the series, and it might be a flaw, but I don't really think it's a flaw, is that Daryl doesn't seem to be overly affected at the idea, the reality that he is in France, that he's across the entire Atlantic Ocean, that he is countries and miles, thousands of miles away from everyone he knows and cares about, and he doesn't really seem to care yet. It doesn't really seem to be affecting him as much as I think it would be affecting him in real life, and I think that there's multiple reasons for that. Reason number 1 is that it's lazy, bad writing, but I'd like to believe that's not the case. Reason number 2 is that he's just been through so much trauma in his life. He's just used to life fucking him over time and time again, and he's just dealing with it, just like he deals with every other traumatic thing that's happened to him in his entire life. But reason number 3, and this is what I think the case probably is that he already knew he was on his way to at least Europe before the show already started, because we don't know the history of Daryl on that boat. We don't know how he ended up on that boat. We don't know how long he knew that group for. And I'm getting the vibes that at some point along the journey on that boat, he accepted the fact that he was across the Atlantic, that he was going to end up somewhere in Europe. And then by the time he was unconscious on that boat when the show starts and he washes up on France, he just already accepted it because there was a point that we didn't see where he had already realized the reality of his situation. My one slight critique this episode is that the pacing felt slightly not as good as the first episode because we get a lot of flashbacks, and then mixing that in with us meeting and getting to know a whole new settlement of survivors, mixed with trying to just familiarize ourselves and get used to this brand new setting and this brand new TV show as a whole, mixed with some character development for Daryl and some cool action sequences. Don't get me wrong, everything they gave us was fantastic in this episode, but it just felt like it could have been paced slightly better in my opinion. But again, once we get episode 3, once we get season 1 as a whole and I rewatch the whole season, it might not feel that way. But as of right now, just this one isolated episode, it felt that way. Anyway, what did you think about episode 2 of the Daryl TV show? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far. And yeah, once again, consider subscribing if you liked this video, if you want to see more Walking Dead videos in the future, if you just want to support a fellow fanatic of this universe. And again, just thank you for watching.